Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the sanctuary this beautiful, hot August morning. I'm Mike Robertson, the pastor, and I'm so thrilled that you very graciously decided to spend a little bit of your time right here with us this Sunday morning. How are you? How are you doing? How you holding up? I told you a few Sundays ago that ever since we started this live stream back in March, not a Sunday has gone by that I haven't tweaked it in some way or tried to find some new improvement that would make things better, a better experience for you out there. Today, I wanted to be a little higher in the frame because I watched some of the previous Sundays and it was like this. And so I wanted to raise myself up a little bit. So I'm standing on a little thin wooden box right now. So if I fall down and you hear a loud crash, you'll know that this plan did not work so well, but so far it seems all right. But I hope you're doing well. I hope everybody is surviving and being safe and being nice, being kind to others, and not making a spectacle of yourself in public like we see so many people doing on the news. It's interesting to see our society and how long it can maintain under a few guidelines before things start to burst at the seams. But I hope you're doing well. I'm doing fine. I'm adjusting to not being able to be here to see you every Sunday, every Wednesday night. I'm doing as well as can be expected at that. On the other hand, I am looking more and more like Santa Claus every day, and that's just fine with me. I like that. Look at this. I'm going to take up prospecting soon. If you have not been joining us on Wednesday nights for our live Zoom chat, you are missing out on so much fun. Now, I know when anybody uses the words fun and church in the same sentence, people get very suspicious and say, yeah, I bet it's really fun. But it really is fun. We've been playing some cool games the last couple of weeks. We have one this Wednesday night that is going to be hilarious. And those who have participated in past Wednesdays, leave comments here if you've enjoyed the Wednesday night Zoom things, because I find myself laughing a lot on Wednesday nights, and that's exactly what I need, and that's probably what you need during this quarantine, is more opportunities to laugh. So join us this Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. You'll get an email with the link to it, but bail halfway through because I think you'll really enjoy it. Excuse me. Now, one item of business. The sanctuary, our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th, the following year. Because of the quarantine and everything got turned on its head this year, we have taken some extra time to work on the budget for this year that we are already in. And we finally have a finished budget. The council has approved it. And now we have to bring it before the church for a vote before it becomes official. So 2 weeks from today, we're going to have a special called business meeting, and it will be done via Zoom. It'll be done right after this service. When I finish this service, I'll shut down the YouTube feed, and then I will open up the Zoom room. And as many of you as can, if you're a member of the church, I encourage you to show up for this. We need to put this matter to a vote so that we can continue to operate. Church is doing really well right now, considering we can't get together, but we're financially in good shape. We're making progress on things. We got the city's approval on our bathroom renovation plan this week and have several contractors submitting bids on that project. I really believe that by the time we come back together, we're going to have brand new bathrooms. And isn't that going to be great? Won't that be amazing? But to do that, we need to have a budget that we operate under. So 2 weeks from today, you'll be getting summary copies of the budget attached to your emails in the next couple of weeks. But 2 weeks from today, please make plans to spend a few extra minutes with us on Zoom after this service so that we can approve the budget. You'll have a chance to ask questions, ask for explanations of things. If there's things you don't understand, all of that will be possible. So 2 weeks from today, August the 30th. All right, let's get to it, shall we? See, I'm kind of waiting right now. I'm waiting for a sign. How am I supposed to know what to do or what to say if I don't get some kind of sign? I mean, the Bible is full of signs. You don't have to read very many pages in the Bible before God shows a sign of some kind to let people know what they're supposed to do. After the flood, when Noah and his family are saved, we're told that the rainbow is a sign from God, a promise to never flood the earth again. And other signs occur also in the book of Genesis. The miracles, all the miracles that Moses does before Pharaoh and on the way to the promised land, they are described as signs that God is with the children of Israel. During the Exodus, God actually leads them in a physical, visible way as a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. There's even an instance in the Old Testament of Isaiah seeking to prove to King Hezekiah that God is the real deal. And Isaiah said, would you be impressed if the sun moved forward an hour? And the king says, no, I'd really be impressed if the sun moved backwards an hour. And Isaiah asks God, and God makes the sun go backwards for an hour to prove that he is in control of everything. Even Samson's hair, he never cut his hair from the time he was born. Samson's hair was a sign of his consecration, his dedication to God as a Nazarene, a Nazarite. Another story that I like about signs from God is the story of Gideon. God calls Gideon to lead an army. And Gideon says, really? Can you give me a sign? And so in the book of Judges, Gideon says, all right, if you're really calling me to do this, here's the sign I'd like to have. I'm going to place a fleece, a lambskin on the threshing floor. And if dew is on the fleece tomorrow morning, if the fleece is wet, but all the grass around it is dry, then I will know that you are really calling me to do this. So he gets up the next morning and he picks up the fleece. Gets up the next morning and he picks up the fleece, and it's enough dew. Don't be mad at me, but could I ask one more thing? Maybe one more little sign. Let me put the fleece out again, but this time in the morning, how about the fleece is completely dry and the dew drenches the ground all around it? And sure enough, when he gets up in the morning, the fleece was dry while the ground is all wet. God does so many signs. When Jesus is born in Bethlehem, this ragtag group of shepherds is sent to go witness this event by a choir of angels in the sky. The shepherds are told, look, this will be a sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes lying in a manger. This will be a sign. And even when Jesus is baptized by his cousin John, a dove descends from heaven. And we're told that this is a sign of God's pleasure and God's anointing of Jesus. Signs are so important in the Bible. But where are our signs? Where do we find signs today? Where do you look for guidance? Well, the fact of the matter is, we look for guidance in sometimes some pretty unusual places. Maybe you check your horoscope out in the paper every day. And you probably almost definitely check the weather report, which is sometimes about as accurate as your horoscope. And then, of course, there are endless experts who try to predict what the stock market is going to do every day, whether pork bellies are going to rise or they're going to tumble. Maybe you take seriously when you have Chinese food and you open your fortune cookie afterwards to see what it has to say. It gives you an instant analysis or a piece of advice and your lucky lottery number so you can win the big jackpot. Now, when I was a kid, you could also get your fortune told in a piece of bubble gum, or a penny scale would also give you a fortune. Or maybe you've even resorted to something like a Ouija board to find out something crucial. There's all kinds of ways we look for advice, for signs of what we're supposed to do. Maybe you've even tried one of these. The Magic 8 Ball. Now, the Magic 8 Ball has been around for more than 65 years, and it really has not changed much at all. You ask it a question, and then you shake it up, and you turn it over, and your answer appears right on the bottom of it. So if I say, is it going to rain today? My sources say no. Who's going to win the election in November? Reply hazy. Ask again later. Do these pants make me look fat? No, you look fat in everything. I have a defective Magic 8 Ball, I think. But that points up the limitations of the Magic 8 Ball. See, it can only answer yes or no questions. Now, maybe you don't know what's inside a Magic 8 Ball. Most of us have never seen what lurks inside this mysterious little ball. I'm going to show you that today. Inside the 8 Ball is a cylinder like this, full of blue dyed alcohol, a blue alcohol solution. And so this is the side that faces the outside of the ball. So it's inside the ball, and you shake it up. Floating inside this blue cylinder is a 20-sided plastic doohickey. It's actually called an icosahedron. Look, this is our 3D broadcast today, first time. It's 20 sides, the icosahedron, and these are the only 20 possible answers that a Magic 8 Ball can get. Of those 20, 10 of them are affirmative, like outlook is good, or signs point to yes, or it is decidedly so. 5 of the replies are negative, such as don't count on it, or my sources say no. And then 5 of them are non-committal, like better not tell you now, or concentrate and ask again later. So depending on how effective your God's answers may frequently sound like Magic 8 Ball answers. God may answer your prayers with yes or no or ask again later. But God is not, however, limited to 20 answers. He's not limited to yes or no questions. But how do you know when it's God speaking to you? What constitutes a sign from God? Well, I think we make some mistakes very often in trying to read the signs from God. The first one is this: we forget the signs that he has already given. You know, you have a big, thick book full of stories and examples and guidelines and commandments from God. I know you've got one. It's probably gathering dust. But see, if you haven't consulted the Bible, you're already overlooking a whole bunch of signposts that God has sent to us to point the way we are supposed to live. It's like people who buy a piece of technology and they get frustrated with it, but they don't consult the manual. Oh no, that would be giving in. They want to figure it out. I have a friend that's an engineer, and whenever I saw him one time work on this little puzzle that he had to assemble out of a dozen or 2 pieces, and he wouldn't look at the instructions. There were step-by-step instructions there. He wanted to do it on his own. Well, people are like that in their lives. There's a whole book full of great advice from God, but they say, no, I want to figure it out on my own. God's prepared for us an awful lot of the answers that we seek, and we're seeking them for nothing. Another problem when we look for signs from God is this: sometimes we don't recognize the voice when we hear it. There's a story I love in the Old Testament, a young boy named Samuel who's living in the house of the prophet of God, Eli. And one night Samuel's asleep and God calls him. God has a purpose for Samuel. And he says, Samuel. And Samuel wakes up and he runs down the hallway to Eli's room and says, I'm here. What do you want? And Eli says, I didn't call you. Go back to bed. And he goes back to bed, and this happens 3 times. And finally, on the 3rd time, the prophet Eli finally goes, oh, maybe this is God speaking to Samuel. Well, see, we need to have a relationship with God so that we recognize his voice when it calls us. It's like the difference in when you get a cold call from a stranger on your phone and the person says, "Is this Mike?" And you say, "Who is this?" The difference between that and when my wife calls and all she has to say is, "Hey," and I know instantly who it is. I know her voice. Plus, it's right there on the caller ID. But God doesn't show up on caller ID unless you've already made contact with him, unless you've spoken before. You need to have a relationship with God so that you will recognize when it's him speaking to you. Another issue we have when we're trying to determine, is this sign coming from God or not? Much of the time, we really don't expect to hear from God. And therefore, we don't spend time in prayer. We don't spend time in our prayers asking our questions and then being still enough and responsive enough to hear his answers. Or we do only half the equation. We list the things we want, but we don't try to find out what he wants. See, that's only half a prayer. Half of it is listening. Look, here's an important lesson that I want you to take away if you don't get anything else out of this message today. It is this: prayer is not to change God's mind. Prayer is to change yours, if necessary, to align with God's. How many times you try to beg God to see things your way instead of saying, "God, help me see things your way"? It works much better, I can tell you that. Another issue we have in hearing God's will, sometimes we mistake God's presence for his will. Just because God is there doesn't mean he's expressing a path for us. Or one of the base foundations of my ministry and my teaching, Sanctuary people, is that God is everywhere. And if God is everywhere, which we often say we believe, if he is everywhere, then we can look for him even in the smallest, most trivial things in our world. I truly believe that. That's why I have done study sessions and classes here on things like the music of the Beach Boys or Seinfeld, because I believe God is everywhere and can be found in anything. But that's not the same thing as thinking everything is a sign from God. Let me say that again. I believe God is everywhere, but that's not the same as believing everything is a sign from God. Imagine you're heading to the grocery store and you get on the highway to go and you see a sign that says Houston 160 miles and you think, "Oh, there's a sign. I guess I got to go to Houston now." No, not every sign, not every visible evidence of God's presence is telling us to do something. I mean, God is in a dewdrop on a blade of grass. There's beauty there. God is in that. But is that a sign for some action we're supposed to do? I don't necessarily think it is. Not a year goes by that I don't read a story. I've got a whole file full of them now. A story like this. A woman is cooking tortillas in her kitchen. And she turns over a tortilla in the pan, and it's got scorch marks on one side of it, and it looks to her like Jesus. It happens with grilled cheese sandwiches or shadows on the garage door. But I remember watching a TV report where the woman is showing the tortilla, and she said, "I think this is a sign." And the reporter said, "A sign of what?" And the woman said, "I'm not sure." Well, I think it was a sign that she should have flipped the tortilla a few seconds quicker. But is God present in a tortilla? Absolutely. We all know Mexican food is divine, right? Absolutely, God is in the tortilla. But is that tortilla trying to tell us something? I don't think so. I think God's message is generally a lot clearer, much less ambiguous than that. I think God has so many other ways he has sought to reach us. If he was determined enough to take on the form of a human being and come down to earth to live among us, if he was willing to do that, Well, renting space on the tortilla to say the equivalent of Kilroy was here just seems a little bit far-fetched to me. God's presence and God's will are two separate things. And then finally, sometimes we just don't accept the signs that we do get. If we don't like the answer, it's easy to shake up the magic 8-ball and give it another try and keep doing it until we get the answer we really want. We can easily ignore the signs God sends us if they're not pointing the way that we really would rather go. A few years ago, I planned a game night for a group of adults, and I was looking for some fun prizes to give out. And I was in the toy store, and I saw a magic 8-ball. And I thought, oh, that'd be a fun prize. So I picked it up, bought it with some other things, got back to my office, was getting everything ready. I turned the magic 8, I shook it up and turned it over. Nothing happened. I shook it again real thoroughly, and I turned it over. Nothing but a few bubbles. And I was stunned to realize I had purchased an 8-ball with no doohickey, with no icosahedron. My magic 8-ball had no answers, not even bad ones. And I thought, wow, there's a big difference between getting an answer I don't like and getting no answer at all. I would much rather know that I'm in contact with God and I may not be ready to follow what he's leading me to do than to feel no sense of presence of God at all. That would be pretty dang scary. In the Old Testament, the story of Jonah, Jonah knew what God wanted him to do. No doubt in his mind, he knew what God wanted. He just didn't want to do it. And so God kept sending him sign after sign, a storm. Don't shake in that magic 8-ball, but he just could not get the answer he wanted. Maybe if you have tried praying and reading the Bible and getting to know God, and you still haven't got your sign, maybe you've just been ignoring it because it's not what you expected or wanted. Sometimes following God's will requires changing on our part or stepping out of our comfort zone. If you think this is silly, what I've talked about today, is it any sillier than opening the Bible at random and pointing in a verse? I've seen people do that before and say, what does God want me to do? And they open the Bible and put their finger in. That's not it. God's not in the business of hiding answers from us. He doesn't want us to be confused. He doesn't want us to misunderstand him. He wants us to know his will as much as we can. There's a quote from Mark Twain I've always liked. He said, it's not the parts of the Bible I don't understand that bother me. It's the parts I do understand. It's pretty hard to misunderstand love thy neighbor, but we manage to do it a lot of the time. Instead of thinking of God as a magic 8-ball, maybe the truth is we are like the magic 8-ball. Maybe the answer is inside us all the time, but we just need to shake ourselves up every once in a while. And then we need to turn ourselves over to the one who made all the answers and all the questions, the one who made the 8-balls and all of us oddballs. Turn it over to the great Creator himself. Here's my answer for you today. Thank you for being here. Love you all very much. We'll see you next time. Have a great week.